Well, yes, of course, in hindsight I should have worn a helmet. Any fool knows that. Well, perhaps not any fool. This fool didn't know that. I mean, this is Cambridge. No one wears a helmet, at least not the adults. Too many hard-headed students and academics. I always joked that I didn't need one, that this mane of hair would cushion the blow if I fell. Turns out that was not scientifically or medically sound advice. Who knew? Yes, that's me down there, on the corner of St Andrew Street and Downing Street, where the temporary traffic lights had temporarily halted the traffic. And even so, I managed to hit a rut in the road that sent me flying. If it hadn't immediately preceded my death, it might have been a thrilling experience, a feeling of weightlessness. People are gathering around now, ashen-faced, looking aghast. I, on the other hand, just look odd. The angles of my limbs are all wrong. Oh, now that's embarrassing. Those boots really don't go with that skirt after all. Clara was right. Oh, Clara, my Clara. Of course, he'll have to be told. He'd want to know. I can't remember if I left instructions to tell him or not. I'm being ridiculous. Of course he'll be told. He'll have to come and get Clara. What a mess I've made. She barely knows him. He barely knows her. They'll be fine. It will be fine. It has to be. Oh, Clara, I'm so sorry. Chapter 1. Now. What about Frida? When the girl spoke, there was a little tremble in her voice, but her delicate chin jutted out with her mother's determination. I'm sorry, who's Frida? The man asked. The girl looked down at the miniature schnauzer curled up on her lap, dozing, and scratched between its ears. Her name's Frida. It sounds more like the name of a cow. I believe you're thinking of Frisian, the girl said quietly. Oh, yes, I suppose so. We named her after Frida Kahlo. Really? Why's that? Isn't it obvious? She frowned up at him. The dog opened its eyes and lifted its head, as if on cue, and also frowned at him from under thick, bristly eyebrows. The man laughed lightly. Oh, I see. Well, I'm sure we can find a nice family to look after her for a bit. Or maybe your grandparents? He knew immediately he had said the wrong thing. Idiot. The girl's just lost her mother, and now you're suggesting giving her dog away as well? He faltered while he looked for the right words. The girl spoke through gritted teeth, her jaw clenched tight. She already has a nice family. She closed her eyes as if trying to shut out everything that was happening. I'm going to take her for a walk, she said in a small voice. She stood up and pulled the dog close to her, burying her face in the wiry fur for a moment before walking out of the kitchen, picking up a lead hanging from a hook in the hallway and slipping out the front door. Well, that went well, the man sighed, lifting the corners of his mouth unconvincingly. The next-door neighbour, who had been looking after the little girl since the accident, smiled at him kindly. Give her time, she said bracingly, and patted him on the shoulder. I'll put the kettle on. The man wandered slowly around the living room, running his fingertips over the things that were once hers. Photographs, books, works of art leaning up against the wall. He felt like he was intruding, being nosy, as if any minute now he would be caught trespassing. But these things were hers, and she had once been his, or he thought she had. The memories were becoming grainy, like old camcorder footage replayed one too many times. It was all such a long time ago, 12, 13, 14 years ago. He wanted to say a lifetime ago, but that sounded a little dramatic. Except that it was a lifetime ago for the girl, at any rate. The man startled as the tinkling of a laden tea tray announced the neighbour's arrival in the living room. The image of Penelope Wilton popped into his mind once again, as it had done when she'd first opened the door. The resemblance really was remarkable. He decided to make an attempt at small talk. "Has anyone ever told you look so much like—" "All the time," she replied curtly, stopping his conversation opener in its tracks. "Right, of course." She handed him a large glazed earthenware mug and made a slight face. "You'll have to forgive the choice of receptacle. Not a proper teacup to be found in the house." "Oh, no problem. I prefer a mug anyway. I always find that teacups don't hold enough tea. You're always left thirsty." She stared at him straight on and spoke as if he were a little slow on the uptake. "Which is when one refills." She trilled the R of refill like a 1940s elocution teacher, and the man was tempted to trot out "Around the rugged rock the ragged rascal ran" in a similar vein. "So," he tried again, "did you know her well?" The neighbour gave a sad little sigh and dipped her head, gazing intently at her own tea that she was stirring. "As well as anyone might know anyone, especially one's neighbours, but she was lovely. She reminded me of my own daughter a little. Always seemed to be late for something or other, rushing off on that bicycle of hers, long hair flowing out behind her." She made a gesture with her hands behind her own head, although her hair was in a neat silver ponytail, tamed to within an inch of its life. Not the reckless curls of the woman she was describing. "Never wore a helmet, of course," she tutted. "Said they always sat too high on her hair anyway, so what was the point?" She dabbed a finger at the corner of her eye and began to engineer her exit from the living room. "If you'll excuse me, I have a lot to do." And with that, she scooped up the tea tray and returned to the kitchen, leaving the man alone with his pixelated past and awkward, high-definition present. He sat for a moment, shrouded in the neighbour's description of the woman who had become a virtual stranger across the years, but who so resembled the girl he had known in the past. Had she been a girl still, or a woman? They had been in their early 20s, children playing at being grown-ups in a strange land where no one had known them. Halfway around the world, where there was no one to remind them of their childish quirks and mistakes. He glanced down at his mug of tea, now gone cold, a greyish film forming over the surface. The girl's keys jangled in the door, her soft voice muttering faint words of praise to the dog sitting patiently beside her on the doormat, and he leapt to his feet, feeling once again as if he were trespassing, worried she would be afraid when she saw him in the living room. He crept guiltily into the kitchen, where the neighbour was busying herself wiping down the surfaces, leaving everything gleaming and impeccable, like a show home or a staged set, as if no one had ever been there. He stood behind her as she worked, shifting from one foot to the other, like a child expecting admonishment. He didn't dare put his half-finished tea down on the polished counter, instead placing it carefully on a carved wooden console table tucked away behind the open door. He made a mental note to wash it up once she was gone. The girl closed the door behind her and unclipped the lead from the dog's collar, giving it a little pat on the rump that sent it skittering into the kitchen looking for its bowl of water. The man smiled at her shyly. She gave him a weary look that transmitted an "are you still here" kind of energy, then hung the lead over the banister and walked past him. "Ah, there you are, Clara dear," the older lady said, folding a faded polka-dot tea towel and placing it neatly next to the sink. "There is a lasagna in the oven and a bowl of salad in the fridge. I really must get back to Gertie. She's a cantankerous old biddy, but she does miss me so when I'm away for too long. Gertie is my dog," she said, by way of explanation to the man. "Part pug, part rug. Lord knows she rarely shifts from it." She bustled over to the girl and squeezed her shoulder. "Now, are you sure you'll be okay? I'm just across the road if you need anything." "Thank you. Frida and I will be fine," the girl replied. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bertram," the man ventured uncertainly. "Oh, please call me Bertie. Everyone does." And with that she was gone, and it was just the two of them. Well, the three of them, including Frida. The timer on the oven beeped, and the girl moved swiftly, pressing the silver button on the front of the display, pulling the oven mitts out of a drawer. She opened the oven door and stood to one side to avoid the sudden rush of hot air before reaching in and lifting the lasagna out, biting one corner of her bottom lip in concentration. It was the gesture of a child edging towards adult responsibilities and burdens. That smells good," said the man. "Bertie is an excellent chef. She often makes dinner for me and Mum." Her voice trailed off and she cleared her throat, squeezing her eyes shut and wrinkling her nose. She crossed over to the fridge and pulled out the salad, arranged around a clear glass dish, and a bottle of vinaigrette dressing. "So, Bertie and Gertie, huh?" The man laughed softly, trying to lighten the atmosphere. The girl cleared her throat, but didn't respond. He tried again. "Where would you like to have dinner?" he asked, thinking she would probably opt for a tray in front of the TV. "I think maybe outside in the garden. It's still warm out." She unlocked the back door and began to ferry the dinner things out to a wrought iron table and chairs, white paint peeling. A rangy honeysuckle clambering over the fence scented the evening air, and she closed her eyes and breathed in deeply. The two of them sat down at the table, and the dog sniffed seriously around the garden. She passed the man a cotton napkin. "Thank you, Clara." "No problem. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what to call you." She had run through various permutations in her mind, but all of them felt strange in her mouth. Father? Papa? Dad? Daddy? Certainly not. "Why don't you just call me Alex for now?" "Okay, Alex." The next 5 minutes were punctuated by the sounds of cutlery scraping on plates and the uncertain exchange of polite smiles. "Look," he said, "are you okay with all this? With coming to live with me for a bit? I realise you barely know me and there's a big stretch of water between your home and mine." As he spoke, Clara tried to get a hold of his accent but found it slippery. Traces of his London roots remained, grounding his vowel sounds, but every now and then it would take flight and travel halfway across the Atlantic, his T's mellowing into D's, giving him the lilt of a hospital radio DJ. "I don't see that I have much of a choice," she replied simply. "Unless you're having second thoughts. Are you trying to back out?" She eyed him warily. She spoke bluntly. She was prickly. Alex felt that was justified, given the circumstances. He put his hands up, palms facing her. "Please, Clara, I'm happy to have you. It's just that it's such a big change for you, moving halfway across the world. And a big change for you too, unless you have another 11-year-old daughter stashed at home." She cocked her head to one side defiantly, but he refused to rise to it. "Nope, not that I know of. Just me." "Do you even like children?" She bristled again and flicked her hair over one shoulder as she stabbed a slice of tomato. "Do you even want children?" was the question, writhing at the back of her throat. "Well, I'm a high school English teacher, so I guess I'm in the wrong profession if I don't," he joked. A fly buzzed lazily around the table, settling on one of the unoccupied chairs. They both looked at it but didn't shoo it away. Clara steeled herself for the next question and cleared her throat again, making space for the words to flow out. Frida came and sat between them, looking up, also waiting on his answer in nervous anticipation. "So, have you given any thought to my question?" she asked. He drew his napkin up to cover his mouth and coughed slightly. I'm sorry, which question?" Clara scratched between Frida's shoulder blades. "About Frida." He had a second chance to give the right answer. "Well, of course she must come and live with us. Absolutely. No question, of course," he stammered, sounding every bit the Englishman he was born. He wasn't really what people might call a dog person, but he didn't mind them. Given the choice, he would rather have had something a bit bigger and more laid back. A dog he could take fishing with him, who would lie on the shore side up at the lake and gently doze next to his chair. He looked down at Frida, who looked back up at him, her beetle-black eyes a little too discerning for his liking. He gave her a tentative stroke of the head, and she seemed to condone the action. Well, he thought, at least the dog wasn't called something ridiculous like Princess Sparkle or something cutesy like Cookie or Muffin. He didn't want to have to call a name like that out in the park. Alex smiled at Clara. There you go, see? She likes me already. So how about after dinner we start looking at flights? I thought you said Frida was coming with us, Clara cut across him. Yes, of course she is. You can take dogs on the aeroplane, you know. No, replied Clara shortly, and then fell silent as Alex tried to glean exactly what he'd said wrong this time. I'm not putting Frida in the hold. She's not a piece of luggage. Mummy wouldn't have wanted it either. She said it was cruel and that Frida would be too stressed and that it wasn't fair. The words came tumbling out now. It was the most Alex had heard her say since he had arrived. She was flaring her nostrils, breathing heavily, staring intently at the ground. She reminded him of a fighting bull, cornered, wounded, but determined. Her eyes were rimmed with tears as she scooped up Frida and held her close. She turned her face away from Alex and rested her cheek between the dog's ears. Have you never been on a plane before? Alex broached gently. He wondered if she was afraid of flying, using the dog as an excuse. Yes, but it was before we had Frida. Mum had been invited to speak at some big art summit in Colombia, and she wanted to take me to see where my grandfather had grown up in Medellin. I was about 6 or 7, I think. The last time Alex had seen Clara, she had been younger, 3, maybe 4. He had come over to England for his sister's wedding. He had written to Erica and suggested maybe they go for a coffee. He was curious to see the little girl she claimed was his daughter, although she had never asked him for anything by way of support. And he was ashamed to say he had felt relieved when he discovered she wanted nothing from him, that he didn't have to be involved. He could go on with his life. But still he felt somewhat intrigued to see if she looked like him, for all that mattered. Erica had introduced Alex to the serious little girl as an old friend of Mummy's, and Clara had sat at the table next to her mother, intent on a colouring book, as he recalled, hardly paying him any mind. She didn't even really look like him that much, after all. She was all her mother's, except maybe the shape of the mouth, now puckered in concentration. What about after you got Frida? Did you not go abroad at all? Alex asked. Not really, although we did go to France once. Frida came on the ferry with us. Clara stopped abruptly, a look of quizzical determination on her face, and then a clearing, like fog rolling back from the shoreline. She put Frida down and went back inside the house. Alex sighed, pushing the last of the lasagna around his plate, and then set his fork down. The sun was setting, taking with it the full warmth of the day. He rubbed the tops of his arms, then slapped his palms down on his thighs and determined to stand up and clear the things off the table. Clara had barely touched her dinner, he noticed, although she had appeared to be eating. Maybe she'd just been moving the food around the plate. He was ashamed that he hadn't realised. He'd been too busy eating his own dinner. Too many years eating alone. These are things he would have to start paying more attention to. He made a brave attempt to hold one plate in his hand and stack the other further up his arm, the way a waiter would, so he could use his free hand to grab the glasses, but then thought better of it, deciding to make a couple of round trips to the kitchen instead. As he set the plates down beside the sink and turned to retrieve the rest of the dinner things, his eyes caught the glow of a blue screen light by the table in the corner. Clara's face was illuminated, looking ghostly pale and deep in concentration. Alex walked towards her to see what she was looking at, and she turned the screen round to him, her face triumphant. Alex squinted at the screen. Oh, geez, he thought. Nope, no way. not that.